Just like partially lived in.
Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us this evening for a conversation with Ashleigh Bryant Phillips and Randal, the authors of the recently released story collections, Sleepovers and Hallelujah Station, respectively. My name is Talia. I'm the events manager here at Flyleaf. Before I introduce our authors, let me tell you just a bit about some of our upcoming virtual events. This Wednesday, we'll be hosting the authors of the new basketball book, Marching Toward Madness, which is sure to be a hit in our sports-driven community. And on Thursday, we're hosting new author Sebastian Matthews in conversation with Southern fiction legend Daniel Wallace. Make sure to check out our Crowdcast profile for the full schedule and to access recordings from those events and others. If you'd like to support Flyleaf and our guests, please keep in mind that Ashleigh and Matt's books are in stock and available for purchase. We have a link just below our faces, and you can also call Flyleaf tomorrow to order over the phone or come into the store. We now have browsing hours from Tuesday through Friday 11 to 3 and Saturday 11 to 5. The hours are always changing, so I'm trying to keep them straight in my head. You also may donate to the store if you feel inclined. There's a donate button beneath our faces. Or you can buy a t-shirt or sweatshirt through Bonfire. I'll post the link in the chat, but the profits from that go towards staff to make sure that everybody gets a little holiday bonus. So that would be really appreciated as well. All right, now I will go ahead and introduce our authors. Randal is the author of the memoir Meander Belt, Family, Loss, and Coming of Age in the Working Class South, and the story collection Hallelujah Station. He teaches creative writing at UNC Chapel Hill. And Ashleigh, who should be back in just a second, is from Woodland, North Carolina. Her debut collection, Sleepovers, won the C. Michael Curtis Short Story Book Prize. Her stories have appeared in the Paris Review, the Oxford American, and elsewhere. Let me see if she is coming back in. Hold on one second. Sorry about that. Yeah, she's connecting. Matt and Ashleigh's new story collections explore the often gritty reality of life in the South, the fractured people and places that populate our region. I'm going to minimize myself in just a moment to let the authors introduce themselves and discuss their work, and then I'll come back to moderate the Q&A at the end of the event. If you have questions for the authors, feel free to write those in the chat or use the Ask a Question feature at the bottom of your screen. And we will try to get to as many questions as we can later this evening. Thank you so much for being here. Let's turn our attention to Matt and Ashleigh.
Thanks, Talia. Ashleigh, it's really good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you too. Yeah.
I like how organized your room looks.
Oh my God, this is like the only organized corner of it. This is,
but it looks good.
Like, this is where my little station. Yeah, it seems like my internet might be cutting out later on this. Just as a heads up, sorry for you.
Yeah, it seems that way. It seems that way.
But it is what it is. I was telling Matt earlier. Yeah, it'll be good. I was telling Matt earlier that I live next to Johns Hopkins, and they're using all of the internet to find a coronavirus cure. So it's, it's all for the good work. But anyway.
I think in the end,
your room looks nice too.
No, my room doesn't look nice. This is like the rental that I never really spend any time with. I'll have to admit that I will be jealous if you get to have no video this whole time. That'll be both awesome for you and, but. So you can hear me?
Yeah.
You're there.
Mm-hmm.
I sort of like in this one way how, I don't know, how completely bizarre and disruptive doing these events on Zoom or Crowdcast is. I think that it has its own sort of strange, for obvious reasons, sub-reality to them. Like we're trying to replace public events in this hardly lived in living room or your beautiful bookshelf back there. But I also like that it throws this like random like glitches and like moving in and out. Like I mean, I don't like it. Like it's my favorite thing in the world is to eat popcorn and watch glitched out readings, no, but I like how disruptive it can be. And just in a sort of post, I don't know, COVID world sort of way, it's not boring.
Yeah, you really get to see how people are, how they react when a glitch comes their way. How quickly can they recover?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. In the beginning, my heart used to beat really fast, and I used to get the stinky sweats, but I don't really care now. I wanted to talk about. I wanted you to go first.
Yeah.
Will you go first? Do you mind?
Yeah.
And first of all, I just want to say that you already know this, but I love the book. I love the book very much, and I want everybody who's here to read Sleepovers and love it as much as I do. And one of the aspects that I love about it so much is that rarely do we get a short story collection that is genuinely set in like in the rural South, as opposed to I don't know, as opposed to someone choosing to set it there for narrative reasons. Does that make sense, or am I just tripping over myself?
Yeah.
It's very
that makes sense. It's Southern lit without choosing to be Southern lit.
Yeah, that's a much more elegant way of saying it. And that is absolutely my favorite thing about the book, is because it's honest and it's authentic, without ever feeling contrived. And I love that.
Well, your work is the same.
I mean, I would never say that about myself, but
I mean, all y'all here, I mean, we're here for Hallelujah Station tonight, but Meanderbelt, just amazing too. Like Matt's linked essays about being from, well, lower class, working class, somehow becoming an academic, and God, the struggle that happens, the internal struggle that happens between your family, your place, where you want to go, what your brain wants to know, what your pocket allows you to do. It's just so vital. And you don't ever read anybody talking about that either.
No.
So
yeah. Well, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you exist.
Thanks. I'm glad you exist. I'm glad whoever's here, I'm glad y'all exist. I was in a Zoom thing last week, and it seemed to me that the phrase that you say to your viewers is, I love to see a loud chat room. So if y'all want to be loud in the chat room and like holler, say hello, that'll be cool. I'll welcome it.
Cool.
Hopefully, Matt, you welcome that too. I just like called it out for all of us.
No, I like it. I think you're supposed to show snapping. I think you do like arrows. I think that's right, to show that you're snapping. I don't know. That's what the kids do.
Oh, cool. We got somebody in there. Sweet.
Good.
All right. Well, should I read?
Please.
Okay. I'm like trying, I thought I was going to read one thing, and then like 5 minutes ago, I thought, well, maybe I should read something else. But, okay, I'm just going to go with, the first story in Sleepovers. It's called Shania. On the day we met, she told me she was named after the sexiest country music star alive, and that she knew how to fire a gun, and that she was 100% Cherokee. My mama says I'm named after nobody. We don't have a gun in our house. I have blonde hair and blue eyes. I'm so jealous of her that I talk about it with Jesus when I say my prayers at night. It's May, and I'm going to turn 8 on July 30th. She's just turned 7 and is about 2 heads shorter than me. When I went to her house for the first time, her daddy had just started fixing up the balcony. She lives in the big gray house on Main Street. Mama says it's Victorian. It's the only Victorian on Main Street that has the balcony falling apart. Pieces of the fancy white trim around the roof is missing. They're all in the yard. You can see them from the road. There's a history book of the town at the town hall. One time when Mama went up there to pay the water bill, I found a picture of that house in that history book. It said her house was built when the town was booming. The picture was black and white, but under the picture it said the house used to be painted robin's egg blue. I don't tell her about that picture, but I think about it when I go into her house. There's no blinds or curtains on the windows. They got sheets hung up instead, like old sheets, probably her baby sheets from her baby bed. And there's this one big window in the living room, and it don't have a sheet. And her grandmama sits there a lot in her chair, and the sunlight comes in on her face, and it makes all the dust in there shine and float around her like magic. And when her grandmama breathes real heavy, you can see how the sparkles dance around her. And when she sleeps, sometimes I get as close to her as I can to see how deep the wrinkles go in her face. And one time when I was real close to her like that, I asked her grandmama about animal spirits. If my kitten carried inside it the heart of a big old ghost. See, she told me that her grandmama talks in her sleep, but she didn't tell me anything. She never says much to me at all. Her grandmama has real fat arms. Her mama has a big butt and says he's hot when some man comes on the TV. Her daddy has a mustache and kills all kinds of animals, hunts them all the time. One time he killed a deer and her mama cooked it. She sneaked into the fridge to show me because she's not allowed to go in the fridge or her daddy yells and the yelling makes me want to go get in the back of the closet like we had to do that one time. But when she put the deer meat in my hand, she told me not to think about Bambi, just hush and eat it. I thought it tasted a little like roast beef, but it was dry. She likes to show off her mama and daddy's waterbed. Seems like every time I go in there, the first thing we do is go into their bedroom and she pokes it. She said that waterbeds are bad back. There's one, it's an Indian warrior sitting on a horse with cactuses or trees, but the mountain way back behind him. And the Indian has white and red paint on his chest. He's sweating. His leg muscles are big and looks like he's squeezing the horse as hard as he can. He's sitting slumped over with his hair in. She always sees, but she never says anything about that Indian. I guess it ain't no big deal to her. She don't go to powwow. She don't go to church either. And the Baptist church is right there beside her house. One time I was there close to supper and we were swinging on her swing set and the church bells started ringing a church song. We had a bunch of her beaded bracelets on and they was making lots of noise when we swung up and down. I told her we were making music. All we needed was a big old drum to beat on like Hiawatha, Junaluska, Powhatan. She thought that was funny. Her backyard has roly-polies, no grass, and a big mean dog tied up at the edge of it. She hates to feed that dog. His name is Butchie. I watch her feed him. And one day that dog jumped up on her and knocked her down. She got up and came to me with her elbow bleeding. She told me she'd fell on a busted bottle. The blood was coming out quick, but she didn't cry. Their backyard has dog food cans and sticks of glass. Pulled it down people in the movies. My grass stuck in my face.
Ashleigh, you're breaking up a lot. I'm wondering if you want to maybe pause for a second, and as soon as your internet connects better, then we can go back a couple sentences maybe. Reconnecting. All right. Thank you all for your patience. This is just how it goes with these things, unfortunately. Earlier when Matt was talking about, the particular weirdness of virtual events, I was like, yep, that's been my life for the past few months.
Didn't want to be insensitive. Sorry.
No, it's fine. It's just it's what happens. We had an event a couple weeks ago, and the author told me that he couldn't get his internet browser to prompt him to turn on the webcam. And we had two other guests, so they were fine. Their video and audio was working great. And then we had the author of the book who I had to call on the phone and put him on speakerphone and hold it up to the computer. And it was fine. We did it, but it's just how it goes.
Hey, Ashleigh, so you started cutting out a lot. Just like the last full sentence I remember hearing was about the thighs of the man on the painting.
Okay, I'm wondering if I should try that.
Sorry,
I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try to join through my phone.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
All right.
Yeah.
That might make a difference.
I think that what I was saying is, what other choice do we have besides to just embrace this as being an aspect? It's as if our computers are the hecklers in the crowd, and you have to have a heckler every once in a while, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So I'm sorry that
definitely.
Ashleigh is the one heckled at this moment.
Yeah, we'll get it. We'll get it sorted out. It's just the way 2020 is. So.
Yeah. Maybe people in the chat have really short jokes. Do you have a really short joke?
Yeah.
Yeah, you said yes. I love that. You're like, yeah, of course.
No, I meant, yeah, maybe the people in the chat do. Do you have any really short jokes, Matt?
I only have this one joke that a friend, there was like a Magnetic Fields cover show for the 25th anniversary of 69 Love Songs. And so my friend made up a bunch of 69 jokes, and one of them was love and death are 69ing, and death says, a little embarrassed, I'm sorry, but I'm going to come before you're ready. And I really like that.
That is good.
Yeah, and that's the one that always comes up. But I hear, what did the fish say? What did the fish say?
When it ran into the wall. And the answer is, damn.
Oh, I like that. What did the bra say to the hat?
What?
You go on ahead and I'll give these two a lift.
That's a good one too.
That's like they're there. Yes. They exist there. What else?
It looks like Ashleigh is in. I'm just waiting for her to connect. I invited her to connect, so we'll hope that happens. Do you want to talk a little bit about your book while we wait?
Yeah, I do. I don't really know what I'm going to say in like a few seconds of having the floor before I actually have the floor, but I really love the cover of my book. It was done by, so I grew up in Memphis, and this painting was done by a Memphis artist named Carl Auger, who was also a punk rock musician. He played in this like anarcho crust band called This Hero Is Gone for a really long time. but you'll see that there's Piggly Wiggly there.
Mm-hmm.
And this lovely billboard, and it's a really beautiful, and behind there you can't really see what, but the Piggly Wiggly is this building, and that was the Baptist Memorial Behavioral College, shorthand for asylum. And it's and in real life it's like 10 by 12 or something like that. It's a very massive painting, and when I was actually titling the title short story Hallelujah Station, I had this, which he calls Clear Channel. I had this painting in mind, and was really excited to be able to get the cover.
All right. Looks like Ashleigh may be back.
Here, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
I think it's not working on my phone, so I'm just gonna take my video off. Maybe that will help. So sorry about that.
Your audio sounds fine. So
okay, yeah. So I'm gonna close the video, and hopefully that won't be so much of an overload. And honestly, like, we can just move on. Like, I don't have to.
Actually, I really want to hear what happens. I want to hear what happens after the man with I want to hear that man's thighs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bring it back to me.
Okay. All right. Sorry that this is such a hot mess.
No, it's a beautiful thing. Let's do it.
Okay. Let me close the video. So now it'll go into kind of.
Ashleigh, are you there?
Let me see something. I'm going to see if I can find her story online.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea.
Yes, when I close the video, it closes the audio.
Let me see if I can toggle your video off. Can you say, I can still hear you.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Perfect. Okay.
Take it from the thighs.
Okay. Okay. And the Indian has white and red paint on his chest. It looks messy. Maybe he's sweaty. His leg muscles are big and looks like he's squeezing the horse with them as hard as he can. And he's sitting slumped over with his hair in his face. There's an arrow sticking out of his back. She always sees me looking at that picture every time we go in there, but she never says anything about that Indian. I guess it ain't no big deal to her. She don't go to powwows. She don't go to church either. And the Baptist church is right there beside her house. One time, I was there close to supper, and we were swinging on her swing set, and the church bells started ringing a church song, and we had a bunch of her beaded bracelets on, and they was making lots of noise when we swung up and down. I told her we were making music. All we needed was a big old drum to beat on, like Hiawatha, Junaluska, Powhatan. She thought that was funny. Her backyard has roly-polies, no grass, and a big mean dog tied up at the edge of it. She hates to feed that dog. His name is Butchie. I watch her feed him, and one day that dog jumped on her and knocked her down. She got up and came to me with her elbow bleeding. She told me she had fell on a busted bottle. The blood was coming out quick, but she didn't cry. Their backyard has dog food cans and cigarettes and broken bottles all over it. I found a piece of glass and pulled it down my hand like people in the movies. And the blood came out, and I didn't cry either, and I held her elbow. Our blood mixed together, and we found a clean spot in the dirt where it was cool, and we sat there long enough for us to be blood sisters. I did a rain dance in the front yard like she showed me how to do. I put my hands to the sky just like her, and I danced so much green grass got stuck in my toes, and the bottom of my feet turned green. But I got mad because I couldn't get it to rain. Mama says the corn needs rain real bad now. Every day morning I check my hairbrush for a brown hair like hers, and today I find one. It's proof of my native blood. I put it in an envelope to the Father Thunder God. I think he's an eagle with spread out wings and turquoise eyes. I write a letter to him, but at the end I remember I don't know his address. And I know that she knows it, and I bet if she don't know, her grandmama knows. So I need to go ask them about it. I asked Mama if I can go to her house after dinner, but she says that I can't go over to her house no more. She says that her daddy hit her mama till she was about dead last night. So I'm going to go and try to slip her some secret notes. I can get some tape from the kitchen drawer, walk up to her house at night, and tape it to the seat of her swing. I think that'll be a good place for her to find them. I want to tell her it's going to be okay, and we'll keep telling each other things like that. But what happens is, I never end up leaving her any notes. We go to different schools. Her daddy leaves them, stop fixing up the balcony. More and more of it falls in the yard. By the time I go to college, the yard's all soggy, shit white. And last time I was home, Mama sent me uptown for an onion. And I saw her working there in JJ's. She was real pregnant, should have been off her feet. I went to her checkout line, and all she said was, "Hello," like you're supposed to do. And when she opened the cash register, the drawer bumped her big baby belly. And while she counted my change, I thought about her in that house, floating alone in the middle of that waterbed, tracing shapes on her belly. And when she handed me the change, her fingernails grazed my palm. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh my God. Sorry.
Off again. Sometimes I feel like such an inept old man.
Yeah, we all do.
But actually, you said it so clear. That was amazing. Man, I love that. My favorite part of that story is the dog. And just that one moment of, how much he hated that feeding that dog.
Oh, yeah. Moment. That was a really mean dog. Like, that's sad. But yeah.
It makes me think like so many of these stories feel like they, I don't know, exist in this like realm of generational memory, of familial memory. And then some of them don't, which is great because it means the story collection, has this like breadth or whatever. But are some of them like from the generational and familial memory of Woodland and Ashleigh Bryant Phillips?
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the little girls I played with growing up, and her house did have a mean dog tied up at the edge of it that I was very scared of. But she didn't cut her hand on a broken bottle. That was another little girlfriend that I have. So that's how fiction works. You kind of like take the memories that work the best together, put them together.
Yeah. I think I'm actually going to read from a story. Only a couple of stories in Hallelujah Station come from my life at all. A lot of them are, obviously they come from thoughts I've had or things I've observed that have been just sort of like transmogrified into fiction. But I feel like there's a few characters in here that are like me, that I feel like have taken I've given a bit of myself. Like Ruth, the character from the second story, and Luz from the last story, and Damien from Rembrandt Behind Windows. They always make me think of that Flaubert, Madame Bovary's C'est Moi, because that's what everybody's like, well, how could you write Madame Bovary? Like, where did that come from? And Madame Bovary is me. But then some of them are not at all. And the first story in this collection, Salvation, isn't even really a narrator that I like. I don't like this person.
Whoa.
Necessarily. I mean, I like spending time with him, but I wouldn't want him to be my friend, really. And yet the story itself came from a friend of mine who I do like being friends with. back when I lived in Memphis, he bought, this is the true part. This is the part from reality. He bought like a old tiny casino steamer, and he had it docked in this crappy, like more derelict than the trailer park you would imagine when I would say a derelict trailer park. It was called the Buttercup Marina. And he had the best parties down there. And so we would go and like hang out. There was a little bar next to the showers, and we would go hang out up there, and it was a complete shit show. It was a mess, but it was really great.
At the Buttercup Arena.
At the Buttercup Marina, yeah. And so that I always loved that. I always like wanted to return to that place because it was like not a place you'd really want to live, even though my friend Sean loved living there and lived there for a really long time. But there was something really special about it. I actually, like, this is on page 22 through this story. He says, my narrator says, the thing about Hazel's Marina is that we were all three-legged dogs down there, barely making it day to day through addiction and poverty. Our life goals had dwindled to one simple request. Let me laugh, man. Please, God, don't throw bullshit at me no more. Just let me eat some and drink some and die laughing with good company. And it wasn't that companionship came naturally to most, or any of us. It was all we had left. So I just wanted to have that in mind. But otherwise, this narrator cooks meth, has a heroin addiction, says of himself that he's never truly felt passionate about anything. And he ends up employing children to sell drugs. So it's not like he's, like I say, I wouldn't be friends with him. But there's something that's, there's something in that world, though, that dwindling to all we have left, where you end up building, or a community, or can exist, or can form, no matter the sort of moral or ethical merits of the person or the people. And that was what I was always drawn to down there, as moral or ethical merits of the individual aside, there was community. So this story involves a 13-year-old boy who ends up sort of being raised by this community. And before I start reading, he's already shown up and then left, and then he comes back. Less than a week later,
I'm gonna minimize myself so you can just everyone's not watching me react. Okay. I don't want you to think I'm dropping out because of Wi-Fi. I'm
all alone. I'm all alone. Okay. Less than a week later, I walked up to the bar in a celebratory mood because I had finally driven my last load of every rotten, ruined, worthless thing from Salvation to the dump. I'd withdrawn $100 of Mom's money and planned to get as many people drunk as I could before the sum dwindled. I carried a box of CDs and planned to DJ, balancing on that precious edge between nodding out and tequila. Hazel hated when I did this. He didn't want its bar turned into anybody's goddamn frat house, but he loved when I played Otis Redding, the Shangri-Las, and the 13th floor elevators. On my way up, I hollered like a town crier, "Shots on me, you bums. Come keep me company." Peter Harrison hopped off his deck, playing the harmonica, marching in time, and from there formed a slow parade of folks ready to drink away whatever they couldn't sweat out or sleep during the day. When I stepped into the bar, there was Lee. He held a backpack full of cheap shit. Mechanical pencils, rubber duckies for the tub, votive candles, hard candy. He also had blank CDs and one-car stereo. Hazel had crossed his arms and gripped his biceps like he meant to tear the meat away. He caught my eye and nodded towards the boy. The bar was dark, and Lee was moving so fast, talking so fast too, grabbing items at random from his bag and thrusting them into the faces of each resident as they strolled into the bar. He shouted prices, 10 cents for this pencil, or $1 for this duck, $1 for a duck, $1 a duck, big money, y'all, bring the money, $25 for this stereo. Peter put down his harmonica, his smiling face rearranged. Hattie took Lee in her arms and wept, and he fought her, but she was too strong for him, too fierce. He stopped flailing and let her lift him off the ground, and she held him like a baby and not a boy, so that his head rested in the crook of her neck, and she petted his hair. When she turned toward the bar, I saw his face in the dim light. Whoever had beaten Lee before sending him out with that backpack had not meant the boy to survive. Besides his eyes purpled and crushed into slits, his temples were swollen beyond his ears, and one nostril had been cut down the middle, so that the single slash now made 2 infected wounds. I succumbed, like Hazel and Hattie, to a nuclear rage when I looked at Lee's face, imagining the hands that worked on him, and I tore Lee from Hattie's embrace and sat him firmly on a stool. I could see terror in his eyes, but I could not control my emotions or the level of my voice. I demanded answers, I shook him, and he watched me from a distance, his soul gone into hiding, leaving only the husk of a boy. "Let go, fool," Hazel said. "Bring him over here. Hug him like you done, Hattie. Tell him this'll hurt worse than a beating, but it will heal." Hazel held a bottle of Everclear in one hand and a sewing needle in the other. I saw what they meant to do, and I yelled, "Wait." I ran back to Salvation and dropped 3 codeine tablets in my hand, broke one in half for Lee. By the time I returned, Lee's face was soaked wet, and he smelled strongly of 100 proof, and he was hollering, but his entire body was rigid in Hattie's grasp. No one, not a single person, made a sound. Hattie and Hazel moved as one. Hazel doused one cut with Everclear, and Hattie pressed the gauze tightly until Hazel cleaned a different wound, and then Hattie's sure hand followed. "Give him these." I handed Hazel both halves of codeine. "He won't feel a thing." Hattie dropped the pills into Lee's mouth, held his jaw closed, and waited until she saw the boy's throat ingest the painkillers. Hazel did not wait. He threaded a needle, ran the point over a flame until it glowed orange, and sewed Lee's nostril together. Hazel's thick and calloused fingers were confident and kind. Lee passed out before Hazel had finished. Hattie taped gauze over the boy's nose and bandaged the cuts above his eyes. "Lay him yonder," Hazel said. And I tucked Lee in Hazel's bed under a wool blanket. I imagined how he must have felt, the codeine slipping through him like warm water, and I wanted him to have something more than the pill could offer, something a boy might like. Hazel's room had only the necessities of life: soap, dental stuff, and a towel. I took the towel, and I folded it lengthways, and then down and over until I held a fat, soft loaf. I raised Lee's hands, cut and scabbed, overlooked in the rush to clean his infected nose, and rested the terry cloth against his body. I'm going to stop there.
Woo!
Thank you, Ashleigh.
That was great. Oh my God, Lee's poor little nose.
I know. Lee. Poor little Lee.
God, no, man. Did you grow up hearing that phrase, God knows?
God knows? No, but my mom used to always say, "God bless America." Anytime anything was... And anytime anything was like too much for her, "God bless America." It was like, whoa, something's real wrong now.
I grew up hearing God knows or God knows, God knows. And as a child, I thought it was actually God's literal nose, you know, his literal nose on his face, rather than him being an all-knowing omniscient.
And so you're like grew afraid of this like hovering nostril holes. This is what I imagine.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, because I mean, I heard it before I knew what words were, like, you know, before I could read. So I guess it, you know, it makes sense. But anyway, yeah. God,
can I say that
Mhm.
something about being on this screen alone makes me feel like we're on cable access, and that I'm taking in callers about UFOs or something like that. You know. Like that's what I do every Monday night is my cable access show.
But another thing that I felt like was going through my brain whenever you were describing about whenever you were introducing this story, talking about kind of like where morality gets kind of thrown, you know. I think when people are doing what they have to do in order to literally survive, that's it. They do what they have to do. Like there is no, you know, morality is thrown, unfortunately, in the societies that need the help the most. I feel like
somebody
that
in an interview that I did not too long ago, somebody was asking about what do they call it? They called it maybe they called it the black market side of capitalism or the back alley capitalism or something like that. And I mean, we all live, no matter an aspect of Buttercup and Hazel's Marina is these are people who can't rent anywhere else because of felony convictions or evictions, previous evictions. So we're all beholden to the capitalist system, whether or not we are benefiting from it. And so the boys that my narrator actually end up like selling drugs for him, they have no other choice. And so even though it's a terrible thing to do, he's actually doing them a favor. And that's not unreal, you know, or I at least didn't think about it as being unreal when I wrote it.
Exactly. It's very true. And I don't know, unfortunately, I think until we get more stories like yours, like others that are out in the publishing world today, creating awareness and making people realize in their comfy homes that this is a reality, things are just going to keep getting worse. I believe that.
Well, Coffee House Press does this cool thing where at the end of their books, they have a little, like they have one of their taglines, and their taglines is "Publishing is not literature." And
hell yeah.
I really like that, or literature is not publishing, or it's something like that. And I really, really think that differentiation is important and necessary because, especially with writers that I know, I don't know how readers feel anymore because I feel like I rarely talk to readers outside of the lens of the writing community, or teaching or the education community. But I do feel like we incidentally believe that publishing, which is this monolithic, mega late stage capitalist system that isn't really concerned with the nuances of the American voice necessarily anymore, as they are in like how they can tap into that nuance of the American voice in a way that still makes money. So, you know, and makes like big money, it seems. And I don't know where I stand and have like, I don't have any feelings either way about my own personal life, but I do think that as writers, or like I want to just remind myself and other writers that is the same. That is it. Literature is not the same thing as publishing, you know, and we don't need these like $100,000 publicity, you know, advances in order to feel validated or to feel like the work is validated, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I feel like a lot of the publishing game is thinking about what other people want. And once we start thinking about what other people want, it just crushes our creativity. It crushes what the artist, you know?
It does. Or it has the potential to. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
That's just me derailing this whole thing into like how toxic publishing is.
I always tell my students who like rightfully who are like seniors and juniors and really eager to get out there in the world and have big questions that being an editor, if they wanted to make change, is the better way of entering that world, you know? I mean, yeah, write books too, but like if you really want to see change, it's like more people in the higher up positions reading differently, and reading with a willingness to think outside of the finances if they're allowed. anyway, I really love Coffee House Press too. So let's see. Should we do questions?
Yeah, I was just about to jump in. It looks like Ashleigh may be reconnecting again. But
Love you, Ashleigh.
But I saw on her Instagram before this conversation that y'all were planning to talk about how music moves your fiction. And I was wondering if you might want to say a little bit about that.
Yeah, we were actually going to try to play some songs to sort of share back and forth. There is, at the beginning of Meanderbelt, I ended up with a Bruce Springsteen epigraph that I had to work kind of hard for. And it's from my father's house. And the way I had to work hard for it was just, I didn't know that the lyrics, the written lyrics of a song are owned separately than the music, the sound version of the song. And so then all of the people who own Bruce Springsteen's archives, like Universal or whatever, didn't actually own the lyrics to all of his songs. So I had to track down this sort of like basement vendor who owned it. And then when I finally found it, it took like 6 months to find out who owned the rights. I had to actually request permission directly from Bruce Springsteen. And so I had to write his personal lawyers. And then I get this manila envelope in the mail with the contract, and it says, make your check payable to Bruce Springsteen. And then I was like, oh man, this is going to be really expensive. I didn't know what it was going to be yet. And it was for $100. And so then I wrote a personal check to Bruce Springsteen for $100, which I loved because that's really cheap in the scheme of things. And I had to write it personally to Bruce Springsteen. I even called my bank and had them mail me a copy, but he only stamped the back. He didn't sign it. I guess for, I don't know. I guess the signature is. Signature. Yeah, you can't have a signature for free, I suppose. So it was just like stamped. But anyway, I really wanted this passage from a Tom Waits song, from the song "Hold On" off of Mule Variations, to be at the beginning of Hallelujah Station. But I didn't want to go through all of that trouble, and so sometimes I like playing that song because it's there's this one stanza in particular that I wanted, which I think I think I might even be able to remember it, and it's something like, down behind the Riverside Motel, it's 7 below and falling. Out below the 99-cent store, she closed her eyes and started swaying. But it's so hard to dance that way when it's cold and there's no music. And I wanted that as a stanza because I thought that would fit very perfectly for the book. And since I couldn't get the epigraph, then sometimes I just play the whole song. And I think Ashleigh wanted to play the Strokes, but.
Well, maybe if y'all would want to put your songs recommendations in the chat, and then folks can listen to them. Yeah. I know it's hard to get everything working with Crowdcast and the whole virtual events thing, but yeah, hopefully Ashleigh is able to get back in here at some point. Does anyone else have any questions that they would like to pose to Matt and or Ashleigh? Matt, because he's here.
It's public access.
Exactly. There's a question in the chat from Karen who said, what reading recs do you have? So you might want to talk about some things you've been reading lately.
I wish that I was reading something that could be recommended. I've been working on a book about bioluminescence for the past couple of years, and right now I'm in this phase that's entirely about mycology and mycelium, and I wouldn't really recommend any of those books. They're really awesome, but I wouldn't be like, this book is fantastic. Though I did one just came out that was really wonderful, and it was called Entangled. The author's name is like Merwin Sherlock or Sheldrake or something.
Sheldrake, yeah.
That book is really good. And then
it's actually been selling really well. It has a gorgeous cover.
A wonderful cover, and it was a great book. It kind of condenses all of this other really dense stuff that I've been reading in a really wonderful way. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to not remember his name, even though he's like super famous, but I don't know why. It's late, I suppose, but he blurbed that book, and I don't have my books. Never mind. Robert, he's like the British nature writer. He wrote about like the trails, the fences in England, and then his last book was about darkness.
Yeah.
Robert, that book was really good.
Well, here's a review that Misha just put in the chat.
Oh yeah, Entangled Life. So good.
Okay, and then
Robert McFarland. Thank you, Misha.
Oh yeah, right. Of course.
Yeah. His
Can
last
y'all
book was
hear
really
me?
good. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
You're back.
This is the most awful. Golly, I hate it. I hate it. But
We had a question from Edward.
okay. I see it in the chat. How did you extricate yourself from those situations?
Ashleigh?
Oh, it's the exact opposite. You're not extricating. From my knowledge of what extricate means, that means to take yourself out of the situation. Correct, Matt? Is that what that means?
That's what I would read it as. Yeah.
It's the exact opposite. For me, I'm fully immersing myself as for example, in the story I just read, 7-year-old me entering into the house of my little playmate, my little first best friend. I like immersion because that's the way I write fiction. I write from the mind of my character. And if I'm not in their mind, then I don't know how the hell the plot's going to work. I've got to let them lead it. So it's full immersion.
Yeah, I think because Meander Belt was happening coinciding with my fiction, and I was so tired of thinking about myself and writing about myself, I absolutely tried to remove myself as much as possible from all fiction. In fact, I would even sit on things. I ended up with few stories of my own to even share after Meander Belt. Because I'd put them all in that book, whether they ended up there in the final version or not. But I hear you in terms of steeping yourself in the character's reality, which then becomes so much like giving your own sort of psychological center over to a fictional being. And in that way, I try to listen. I try to pick up on what the fictional character is saying, and I try to listen without letting my own experiences get in the way, and then also not denying them when they might fit in. There's a story called Rembrandt Behind Windows, and there's two truths in that story. And one is my mom had a painting of a Rembrandt, the Danae Rembrandt, which is it's the myth Danae, and it's the king was afraid of his own demise, and so he locked her into a chest and then threw her in the sea when Zeus impregnated her. And so Rembrandt painted this picture of her naked on this bed, and she's like all in light, and it's Zeus's light, and behind her is Rembrandt, or what people think is Rembrandt, spying. And you kind of know the story that somebody is going to then tattle. So as my character says, this little peeping-ass squire is going to blow the whole thing up. And I always thought that was so weird that my mom had this Rembrandt hanging in our house. And I know she just found it. My mom loved collecting things off the side of the road. She loved doing that. And so I knew that she just found it on the side of the road and liked it and then hung it up in the house, but it didn't match with anything else in my life. And so I was always obsessed with that. And there was a time when I actually did drink a lot of NyQuil when I was 14 or 15 years old, and that was also in that story. But there are these moments where I'm yeah, there's an influence, and then there's a moment where I'm yeah, I'll use that moment from my life. But I think Meander Belt had just winded me and took out all of my own desire to include anything about my real self in fiction.
Yeah. That makes sense to me. It looks like we've got 2 other questions. Edward said, to clarify, he meant physically. How did you extricate yourself physically from those situations of your experience? I don't know if you got a word or 2 to say about that. I mean, I can say like one thing.
Yeah, I feel like, yeah.
So the great and tragically late Randal Keenan, he said in an interview, he said, the farther away, I'm gonna like butcher this, but basically the idea of what he said was, the farther away from home you get physically, the sharper home becomes. True for me.
Very true. Very true. I did an event in Memphis with a really old friend who's also a writer, and the artist who did the cover for the book, and they were talking about how much of this of Hallelujah Station belongs, and the person who did the interview lives in Memphis again, and he was saying everything about this book belongs to a Memphis that doesn't exist anymore. You know, and I it actually took me aback because I just assumed that it was carrying on in the same way that it was when I left 20 years ago, you know. But then to have it called nostalgic, I thought was really interesting. And then also made me think like, well, maybe I've tapped that resource, you know?
Yeah. We also have, we have a question from Cody in the chat or in the questions box, which is, are there any writers outside of the usual suspects in Southern literature / grit lit that were especially influential on you and your writing?
Yeah.
You want to go first, Matt? Or you want...
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll go first because I'll probably just say the ones that anybody would say, and you'll probably have more interesting ones. But Larry Brown is definitely one of my favorites. I also really like poets from the South. So I think about Charles Wright as one of my favorite poets. I definitely think about Randal Keenan, and his last story collection was just phenomenal. And if people have not read that, then I highly recommend it. Those are the names that come to mind immediately. I used to really love, obviously, Cormac McCarthy. I really did, and then I realized at one point that Blood Meridian was funny, and then when I reread it a second time, and I was like, wait a minute, I don't think I've ever really understood Cormac McCarthy, and then I realized I needed a long break. If that makes any sense.
Sure. Yeah, makes sense. Sometimes you
Ashleigh?
just need to put certain authors on hold for a little bit.
Yeah, when I first read it, I was like, oh, this is so tough. It's about violence, blah, blah, blah. And then I read it again, and I was like, this is like silly.
I think it is easy to assume that Matt and I would both be influenced by Southern literature and grit lit, given that we both release short story collections that, you know, his are mostly based in Memphis, mine is based in North Carolina. But I didn't know what Southern literature was until I was in college. And the stories that I was reading were by Eudora Welty and Flannery O'Connor. And while I could appreciate why they were great, I didn't relate to them. I didn't relate to the characters that much. I didn't feel seen on the page. Even though I knew they were Southern writers and it took place in the South, I didn't feel seen on the page. And it wasn't until 2012, when I graduated undergrad, that one of my Shakespeare professor actually he went to UVA at the same time that Brice de J Pancake was at UVA. Now, Brice Pancake is not a Southern writer. He's an Appalachian writer. But my Shakespeare professor gave me Brice's first collection and only collection of short stories. And for the first time, I saw my people on the page. Even though I'm not Appalachian at all, I'm from very flat lands. When my grandmama went to one of my cousin's weddings in the middle part of North Carolina, where it just starts getting a little bit hilly, my grandmama was like, I cannot handle these mountains. And hills. So anyway, I'm from Eastern North Carolina, very, very flat, but Brice was writing about working class farmers, working class people. And more than anything, that's why I also loved Raymond Carver, because all of his characters were on unemployment or had lost their jobs or were looking for jobs or were trying to buy a car, trying to sell a car, were waitresses, were all working class people. And for me, growing up in the South, in one of the poorest regions of North Carolina, that's the life that I knew. So I related more to, Raymond Carver than anything else. And then I saw Brice and I was like, whoa. But then as far as poets, I'm glad that Matt brought up poets. Frank Stanford is from Arkansas. And my God, like when I was in graduate school, my brain was fried and I couldn't read anything that anybody was telling me to read, which is bad of me in grad school, bad grad student. But I kept a copy of Frank Stanford's poetry collection in my bed, and every night I would look at it before I went to sleep. And, I was writing some of the stories and sleepovers while I was reading those poems. So they're bound to have found, some impact on my work. But I mean, before I write any short story, I think, how would Raymond Carver do this? He's not Southern at all. He's Midwestern, but he knows what it's like to not have any money. And so I relate with him that way.
All right, I would second and third all three of those. Yeah, especially Brice and Frank Stanford.
Yeah. And Harry Crews writes a really good novel too. Oh my God.
I love Harry Crews.
Feast of Snakes is so good. Yeah. And Body is amazing.
I do love Harry Crews.
Yeah.
Yeah, Blood and Grits. That his collection of his journalism is my. You can't. I always want to teach it, but it's out of print, so you can only buy these like $30 copies. But he wrote about the Valdez Pipeline. Like he was sent by Playboy or something like that up to Alaska to write about the Valdez Pipeline when it was just getting built, and it begins with this man with no legs on a skateboard taking a shit in front of the company bar. That's pretty amazing.
Was great.
Yeah.
He was great. And once I did find Larry Brown, I did appreciate so much how he treated his characters.
Yeah.
He loved every one of his characters. And I found him later after I had started writing for a bit. But I was like, this guy, I want to write all my characters with as much heart as he does. And
that's exactly right.
Yeah, so he was from Mississippi. So there's a Southern writer for you. My favorite by him is Samaritans, and that's from his first collection.
The Facing the Music.
Yeah.
Well, do we have time, or are we?
Let's see. I think
any more questions?
Yeah, if we have any more questions, we could take maybe one or two more. I don't see any yet, but maybe somebody's watching has something to ask. Oh, Ashleigh, I spoke to Matt briefly while you were out of the Crowdcast about music because I know that was something y'all had wanted, and I know we can't play songs, but if you wanted to talk a little bit about the song you had picked and what that meant to you or how that informed your writing, that would be interesting to hear.
Yeah, sure. I'll just tell y'all real quick. The song that I was going to share was The Screens, and it was written by Atlas Sound. And Atlas Sound is a solo project of Bradford Cox. And Bradford Cox is from Georgia. He's also one of the members of the band Deer Hunter. But basically, in the year 2010, I would have been 20 years old. I was living in the city for the first time in my life. I volunteered at a big music festival. And Atlas Sound performed at that music festival, and it changed my life forever. I had never seen any music like that before in my life. He played alone by himself with a bunch of pedals and an acoustic guitar, and then like a Bob Dylan kind of harmonica around his neck. And I wrote this song, I wrote the story, Shania, listening to one of his songs on repeat. After I discovered him at that festival, I went home and I found everything I could about him. And his song, The Screens, starts with a very dusty sounding harmonica. And to me, a dusty sounding harmonica, to me, that meant going into the past. And then his first lyric is, I knew a guy. And so in my mind, I thought, I knew a girl. Who's the girl I knew? The girl I knew was Shania. And then I wrote the story. And so that was one of the first short stories I ever wrote. And it was from that song. And yeah.
Did you use it like a constraint? Like a free ride, like a constraint? Or was it just like a jump off?
I mean, I loved listening to it while I was playing it. So I remember I had it on repeat. And so I just kept listening to it over and over and over. Most of the time, whenever I start writing and get into the groove of it, everything else that's going on in my actual physical world kind of goes away, except for sound. But then I don't even really pay attention to lyrics. Like I can listen to songs with lyrics while I'm writing when I get into the groove, which is strange. But I guess it's strange, but I don't know. But anyway, that was the song I was going to share.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I think we are going to go ahead and wrap up. As just a final reminder, if anyone would like to buy Matt or Ashleigh's books, or Matt and Ashleigh's books, please do so from Flyleaf. We really so appreciate it. There's a link to buy just beneath our faces. You can also call, not right now because we're closed, but tomorrow. Or we have in-store browsing hours Tuesday through Friday from 11 to 3, and then Saturday 11 to 5. We also have a fundraiser going to benefit staff that is t-shirts and sweatshirts. We also have a donate button here if you want to support our programming. That helps us like pay for Crowdcast and marketing and things like that. We really appreciate that. And I just want to say thank you so much for coming out, and thank you to Matt and Ashleigh. It's been a great conversation, and we really appreciate y'all joining us tonight.
Thank you, Talia, for hosting
yes.
and for putting up with my technology shitty issues over here.
Well, actually, I wanted to say thank you for braving through all that.
I mean,
yeah,
that was wild.
Yeah, I did it. We did it.
You did it, y'all.
And those are great questions too. So thank y'all for those questions.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good night, everybody. Thanks so much.
Bye. Thank y'all.